Hello, I'm JD and welcome to this presentation on site backup. There are three main reasons for making a WordPress backup. First would be to recover the site in the case of a system loss, a hacker attack, problems at the data center or the server, etc. In these situations, the site is inaccessible and we need a backup to be able to restore the site somewhere else quickly and safely. We also might want to use a backup to restore the system after a version upgrade, a plugin update or other update has caused problems to the site, and it is easier therefore to go back to the version before the update and have the update issues solved somewhere else than having a site not working properly with customers not able to access the site correctly. So we can use the backup to bring the site back to the previous working version while somebody else somewhere else fixes the problems that have been caused. The third reason why we might need a backup is if we are migrating our site to another service or provider, it is far easier to use a backup to migrate the site than other copying facilities. So we can use a backup to restore the site into a new place and bring that online as soon as possible. So the question then is, what do you back up? Well, you do not back up everything. There's a lot of underlying code of WordPress on a site which you do not really want to back up. Firstly, because it's going to add significant size to your backups and therefore the speed at which they can be created and copied, etc. Secondly, there are quite often bits of code put in there by different hosting providers which allows their systems to run faster and will not work well on other people's systems. It's also bad practice. You may be swapping between release versions. Again, you wouldn't want to have copies of that. So within the WordPress setup, there are certain parts which you need to back up. Firstly, the themes. You need the look of your site to be backed up. Now you could back up just the active themes, and when I say themes, that's because if you're using a child theme, you may find that if you're using a child theme, you need to back up your child theme and the parent theme, so there are more than one theme involved. You may have multiple themes for a mobile environment. There may be a mobile theme that's used for your smaller screen devices and then a main theme for everybody else. So you should back up all the active themes or all the themes on the system. If you have redundant themes, it's always good practice to clean them up and remove them when they're not needed anymore. You will need your plugins. Yes, it is possible to install the plugins from the original places, but it is much better to have the plugins available in the backup. So you need to back up at least all your active plugins, if not all the plugins, and the comments about leaving redundant plugins hanging around is the same as redundant themes. Although in both cases I should point out that they are not expected to make any great effect to efficiency of the running of the site, but that's no excuse. They still should be taken away if they're not being used. Your media directory is the place where you're uploading all the files, the images on the media button. So you will need to back up all these files so that you have all the images in the correct places to continue with your site working properly. The wp-config.php file is the configuration file which is created when you first install WordPress. It has information about the database name, the database table, the username and password to get to the database server, and the encryption keys to get into encrypting information in your database like user passwords. This is in a completely different place to everything else, and although it's usually in the root directory, for security reasons it's sometimes put elsewhere, so you need to check this one very carefully. The .htaccess file again is one of these files which actually helps with the mapping of URLs, so short names and things like that mapping. If you've had some custom changes made to this file, you will need to have a copy of it. Otherwise, pages will suddenly disappear from where they're supposed to be. So again, it is important really to be able to back these two up or mitigate the issues of them not being available. The next thing you need to back up is your WordPress database. The WordPress database is the database files which hold the contents of most of your system. So when you add a post, when you add a page, all that text, etc., is what appears in the WordPress database. Settings for plugins, etc., and data for plugins will also be in that WordPress database. And lastly, there could be reasons why certain plugins or certain uses have uploaded files somewhere else into the system. You need to know if they have where, and whether these are needed to be added to your list of backups. Not always great practice to put them somewhere else, but there are sometimes legitimate reasons why files are put elsewhere, and you need to decide whether they are needed in the backup. The next question then, of course, is when are you going to do backups? Well, most systems are going to suggest that you do a daily backup, and this is a good enough, regular enough way for most sites, a daily backup. You should also, though, think about having specific backups run before any big update or plugin or theme installation. For your information, we do backups early in the morning. About 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, our backups are done on a daily basis. This is when we have found there are the least number of people on the system, so the processing required by the backup is going to have the least effect on website visitors. But we also do a backup before we install any large plugin updates or any major WordPress plugin update. So if things don't work properly, we can bring the system back very quickly. So these backups should be done hopefully when the site is quiet, because as I said a few minutes ago, it does have an effect on the site's performance. Of course, not everybody's going to want to get out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning to do their daily backup, so automated backups is a good idea, and we use that here ourselves. But of course, if you are going to use automatic backup scheduling, you first need to check it works, and you need to know the system is going to alert you if a backup fails for whatever reason, and backups can fail. They can go to backup files that have suddenly disappeared or not there, or they don't have the rights of access. Even a backup that's been working fine for weeks, even months, can have a failure. And of course the next question is going to be then, how many backups are you going to store for how long? I personally think that a week's worth of backups are enough, although we keep about 10 to 14 backups on our system. You may also want to have a different place for backing up some long-term backups, perhaps a monthly backup. But you shouldn't need dozens and dozens and dozens of backups. They will eat up space very quickly. And if they are needed, then the security and the resilience of the rest of your system is going to be drawn into question. Where should you back up to? These files have got to be stored somewhere, and it makes no sense to back them up to the same place where your website is. If your website dies, your backups go as well. It could be said that it should be somewhere further away than your data center. If the data center has issues and you can't get into the data center, then your backups are going to be locked away with your site and not accessible. So certainly not the same server as your site is hosted, and you need these backups somewhere you can get access to easily, and that then suggests that maybe your data center is not the best place. I would suggest that you put at least one backup somewhere else, perhaps an Amazon S3, Dropbox, Google Drive. Now, I suggest you use one of these third-party services and not downloading onto your own laptop, desktop or network, because when you want to restore a system, you'll quickly realize, if you haven't noticed already when uploading videos, that uploading on broadband is a very slow, tortuous process compared to downloading. And if your backups are on a local service which requires a broadband connection, or if you get caught short, you're on a Wi-Fi, it's going to take forever to get your backups copied somewhere else. So I do suggest that you have a backup on a faster file storage service like Amazon S3. You can see that I'm erring here towards caution of having a multiple backup strategy, and that's what we have here. So we have our main backups at the data center, but not the same server on our regular backups. We pull down a last backup for a system restore onto a fast service like Amazon S3. And we also download local backups, which we quite often use when we want to evaluate, test, or check out something, or sit down with a customer and look at issues. And then it comes to the question, wonderful backup, sir. Have you ever tried to restore one? You really need to practice this, or whoever's going to be responsible for restoring your system needs to practice and check the restore works. Have a list of instructions like we do here. Because if you can't restore from your backup, then all these backups are just a waste of time and a false promise. It's no good finding your plan is flawed when it's too late. So you need to do a restore practice. You need to restore it to a host which you may or may not want to use in the future. There are hosting providers where you can provide a low value, simple hosting configuration which won't cost much, and you can test on. After all, this doesn't need to be used in anger. It doesn't need lots of visitors on it. It just needs to be able to work to show you that the backup is complete and will work when you need it. There are issues about whether it's the same site, which you need to also look into. And these issues to watch out for are the WP config. Has it been copied? Has it not been copied? If it's not copied, you're going to lose passwords, but password restoration is quite easy to get hold of. It would need to be changed anyhow if database names have changed. You might be restoring to a different domain name for testing purposes or to check it's working. This is going to give you issues about whether links are going to work between sites. You need to be aware of what's the implications of that. You may have a multi-site installation which you've backed up into or out of, and you need to know the issues of whether directories have moved, changed position, mapping has changed. It's not on this slide, but of course the HT access system has also got to stay there as well, because if you've got HT access issues, you might have mapping changes of files as well. And there could be other issues with third-party services that talk to your website. These could be subscribing into or sending information through an email provider or another server like, say, Google Analytics. Could be talking to third-party mailing systems like Aweber or marketing systems like Constant Contact. It may well be that quite a few of these do not work straight away, but as long as you know how you need to put in whatever keys or setups to restore them quickly, it is not an issue. So if you're feeling lost at the end of all that, then don't worry, because I expect the majority of people that have watched this presentation will be. You can always find somebody to do this for you. You can take this set of instructions as a template, and once you've found somebody, make sure that as part of the agreement they demonstrate to you that their restore setup works, and therefore the backup they set up for you work. Have a trial run of your backup being restored. And if you're more cautious like we are here, you should test that restore process every few months or after a major WordPress update, or maybe a major plugin that you use is updated. Make sure that the changes are not going to break your backup and restore process. So that's the end of this presentation. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please subscribe to our WordPress, our Facebook, and our YouTube channel. And thanks again. Goodbye.